Common Spanish phrases to master your first conversation with a native speaker. Are you starting to study Spanish or thinking about doing it? Are you planning a trip to Spain or to other Spanish-speaking country? Do you want to learn Spanish in order to get by at work or to have a better job opportunities? Or is it your goal to improve your memory and logical faculties? The truth is that there are a lot of reasons for people to learn a new language, regardless of what is yours. There are some basic sentences you must learn to say, the first thing we normally talk about when we met someone new. In this video, you will learn the most common Spanish phrases to master your first conversation with a native speaker. They include how to greet and say goodbye, how to ask how the person is doing, how to show politeness, how to ask where is the person from, and the other common Spanish phrases that will be your survival kit to communicate with Spanish native speakers. Good morning in Spanish and other greetings. Let's begin with greetings. Knowing how to greet someone is very important no matter the language you're trying to speak, because it shows respect to the other person and it is an easy way to start a friendly conversation. In Spanish, the same way as it is in English. There are greetings that you can use in any situation and others that depend on the period of the day. Here are the most common greetings in Spanish. Hola means hello. Buenos dias means good morning. Buenas tardes means good afternoon. Buenas noches means good evening. Bienvenido means welcome. Que gusto de verlo, which means what a pleasure to see you. Be careful to pronounce correctly the letter G in Spanish in this last sentence. You can add more enthusiasm to any of these greetings by using the exclamation point. Just remember that in Spanish, there are upside-down question and exclamation marks. Hence, you have also to write the inverted exclamation point at the beginning of this sentence, like this: Buenos dias, which means good morning. Bienvenido, which means welcome. Que gusto de verlo, which means what a pleasure to see you. We have seen how greet people in Spanish. What about the farewells? How to say goodbye, see you soon, or have a good day in Spanish? Here are the most common farewells in Spanish. Adios, which means goodbye. Hasta luego, which means see you later. Hasta pronto, which means see you soon. Hasta la vista, which means see you next time. Hasta mañana, which means see you tomorrow. Nos vemos, which means see ya. Buenas noches, which means good night. Que tengas un buen día, which means have a good day. Introducing yourself in Spanish. One of the first things, if not the first one, we learn about the person we have just met in his or her name. You cannot say that you really know someone if you do not know the person's name. Therefore, how can we ask the person's name and also introduce ourselves in Spanish? Use the sentences below. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? Which means, what is your name? ¿Cuál es su nombre? Which means, what is your name? ¿Cómo se llama? Which means, what is your name? Me llamo, which means, my name is. Thank you in Spanish and other courtesy words. Do you know what are courtesy words? There are expressions that show politeness and respect, such as words used to thank other person or apologize to them. Let's see how to say the most common courtesy words, like thank you, sorry, and you're welcome in Spanish. Gracias, which means thank you. Muchas gracias, which means thank you very much. De nada, which means you're welcome. Perdón, which means I'm sorry. Disculpe, which means sorry. Por favor, which means please. Con permiso, which means excuse me. Señor, which means Mr. Señora, which means Mrs. Señorita, which means Miss. Asking information in Spanish. First of all, we have to learn how to ask things using common Spanish phrases. We have already seen the word ¿cómo? To ask how the person is doing. ¿Cómo estás? And ¿dónde? To ask where the person is from. ¿De dónde eres? But there are other words used to ask questions in Spanish. The same way English has the WH question words, Spanish has these specific words to ask questions. ¿Qué? Which means what. ¿Cómo? Which means how. ¿Cuándo? Which means when. ¿Cuánto? Which means how much. ¿Dónde? Which means where. ¿Quién? Which means who. ¿Por qué? Which means why. ¿Cuál? Which means which. Now, let's see some useful sentences to ask information in Spanish using the question words you have just learned. ¿Qué hora tienes? Which means what time is it? ¿Qué edad tienes? Which means how old are you? ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? Which means when is your birthday? ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? Which means what is the day today? ¿Hablas inglés? Which means do you speak English? Other useful and common phrases in Spanish. There are some other sentences that you will use a lot of times when making small talk with native speakers. Of course, we cannot include all of them in this article, but let's learn some of the most useful common Spanish phrases. Sí, which means yes. Claro, which means of course. Siempre, which means always. A veces, which means sometimes. Tal vez, which means maybe. No, which means no. Nunca, which means never. Felicitaciones, which means congratulations. Feliz cumpleaños, which means happy birthday. Feliz Natividad, which means Merry Christmas. Feliz Año Nuevo, which means Happy New Year. Te amo, which means I love you. Con mucho amor, which means with much love. In this video, we have seen many common Spanish phrases to master your first conversation with a native speaker. Practice their pronunciation and don't be scared of making mistakes. You will then be ready to talk with confidence to the first native speakers you encounter. Did you like the tips of this video? To get many more code tips and boost your Spanish learning, subscribe to my YouTube channel.